Hi, and welcome. I'm Steve Martirano, and this is the Behavioral Corner. You're invited to hang with us as we discuss the ways we live today, the choices we make, the things we do, and how they affect our health and well-being. So you're on the corner, the Behavioral Corner. Please hang around a while. Hey, everybody. How you doing? Welcome once again to the Behavioral Corner. I'm Steve Martirano, hanging, as I usually do, here at sort of the intersection of, the stuff we do, the decisions we make, and how all that stuff ultimately affects our behavioral health. Big topic. You know, behavioral health, the way you behave, affects your health, your mental health, your physical health, and your spiritual well-being. And we explore in that context a whole lot of different people and events in their lives. But very often we return to the issue of substance abuse and stories of that struggle and how people manage it to get sober. They do. Millions do, by the way. Dirty little secret about substance abuse is that people get better. They do. Last figure I saw was upwards of 20 million people who are living in long-term sobriety. So we like to remind folks of that. Best way to do it is to get people who've been there and done that, let them tell their story. So that's what we are about today on the Behavioral Corner. And in order to paint as complete a picture of that whole process, it's important to remember that it's very rare, but not impossible, for recovery to occur without relapses. But as I said, it's very rare. And a misunderstood event in the life of someone who's suffering from substance abuse is this relapse notion. I think on the outside it looks like a failure, and in one sense it's a stumble, but it is not a fall. And that's what we're going to particularly focus on with our guest today, Alex Penn. He joins us through our friends at Retreat Behavioral Health, who are underwriting partners of this, and they have a great alumni group, and it's more of a social gathering, as I understand the alumni group. But these are people that are in sobriety. They have been clean for a while, and they gather to compare notes. So Alex comes to us through them. Alex Penn, welcome to the Behavioral Corner. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Steve. It's great to be here.
So let's begin at the beginning. Who are you? Tell me a little about yourself. Where'd you grow up?
Yeah, so I grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia, an area near Lansdale. Went to North Penn High School district. Ended up graduating. Went to college out in California and was out there for a number of years. And then, I circled back here around 2010, and I've been around here ever since.
Yeah. Characterizing briefly, it sounds like your garden variety, middle class suburban upbringing. Is that pretty much what it was?
Yeah, I mean, I would say probably upper middle class at a minimum. I really had two loving parents that completely supported my brother and I. I went to college. I did not have to pay for college, so that was a great blessing. I had two people, and by the way, they don't use drugs or drink alcohol in excess. So, the fact that I kind of identify myself as an addict today has really nothing to do with them.
Yeah. It's one of the ironies of substance abuse rising to the level it has over the past 10 or 15 years, and that the face of it hasn't changed, but it has revealed itself as being much broader than the stereotypes I was brought up believing. These were people of lesser economic conditions. They were often minorities. It was an inner city problem. It was a crime based context. We now know it's on the cover of Wheaties. Boy, it's everywhere. So it doesn't surprise us to hear that about your background. Tell us about now. So there is a very unlikely situation, you would think. Why would a fellow like that get himself in trouble with substances? How did that begin for you?
Yeah, so I started using, around the time I was 15 or 16. And, prior to kind of coming on this podcast, I always try to reflect on, what happened, what was the catalyst, and that has changed over the years. But I think the reality is that I had a lot of pressure. I was very uncomfortable in social situations. I had things that I was insecure about that kind of, I think, exposed me or made me a little bit more vulnerable to, using drugs and really trying to escape. And I think in the beginning, there were two things I was trying to do. I was trying to escape the problems that I had, which were, listen, these are luxury problems, worried about getting good grades or going to a certain school. But also I had issues about, fitting in and not feeling comfortable in my own skin. And when I started to use drugs, in particular, I'm just going to say drugs and alcohol, it's all one thing for me. It modified my behavior. It made me feel more comfortable and allowed me to, fit in and kind of calm some of the mental stuff that I had going on. And, when I discovered that I could get that relief, I wanted that relief all the time. And, for me, when I started using basically full time right away.
Yeah. I've done a lot of these interviews, and this notion of not fitting, something being amiss for no apparent reason is a pretty common description. And then the relief offered by self-medicating through substances. That's also sort of follows. I have a question. Just maybe the first person I've ever asked this to. Did the anxiety of not fitting get relieved because you had altered your consciousness through chemicals or whatever, or because using the chemicals put you in a different social group and suddenly you thought you found your peers? Which one is it? A little bit of both, maybe?
I think it can be both. You're certainly using drugs, and that is a different group. I was, a top athlete, so I was always playing soccer and running track, and I was involved with a group that most of them did not get into drug use on a regular basis. And then when I was using, I associated with people that were using just like me. So I was in multiple circles, and I would say it's a little bit of both for me.
Yeah. You were one of those guys who tragically were able to keep all those balls in the air at the same time, so it only prolonged the ordeal, right?
Yeah, I would say in the beginning, listen, it was like, okay, if I don't want to get high today, I don't have to get high. I'm not going through withdrawal symptoms. Maybe it's a little uncomfortable. When you're 15, 16, that's one thing. And I do remember going off to college the summer before I went to college. I realized, hey, you know what? Like, I shouldn't be using any drugs when I go to college. And I remember 2 weeks before I left for college, I stopped using. I don't even remember having any discomfort from that, except for like, hey, I just wasn't doing it. But when I did get to college and I saw everybody was doing it, I was alone at that point. I was with, new kids, new situations. It's exciting. I went to school in California. I started using right away. And, within 6 months of me being in college, I wasn't going to class anymore. I was not failing out, but I was not happy. And there was a big difference in how I felt. And I do realize that had started when I first stared using. I was suppressing feelings.
That idea you had is what, 17, 18-year-old off to college to, okay, I got to straighten up. Time to get smart. That's a pretty sophisticated insight for somebody who was sort of handling it. Why did you think you had to stop?
To be honest, I got mostly A's in honors classes, and my senior year, I got a D in this math class. And, my parents had found pot once or twice, and it just, I think this is the one that is just, this feeling has stuck with me throughout the times I've tried to get clean and relapse. And the basic fact is I wasn't raised to do drugs. I'm acting against my instinct, the way I was raised by my parents and my family. And so, at some point it is exciting, but ultimately I do feel really guilty about letting myself down and letting the people down around me. And so that was always a big driver for me. And, a lot of times when I try to get clean, I don't like how I'm acting as a person.
Yeah.
And that's there's disappointment. You're disappointing others, but it's so much more internal, internal feelings that you're experiencing that drive me to get clean.
This notion of disappointment is interesting. You're disappointed. Did you struggle with why you were like this, given that, as you said, you weren't raised to be this way? There's nothing in your life that should have indicated it. Did you struggle with the why?
I didn't start struggling with the why until I was probably 24 or 25, when I had gone through it. It took me a while, and I think it takes a lot of people a while to start realizing that they have a problem. So I wasn't necessarily aware that drug use for me was a problem. Yes, I'm not getting, good grades sometimes. Sometimes I'm not going to work. But you start seeing that as kind of external reasons. You're not looking at the internal reasons. So, I'd say when I was 24, 25, I started just coming to a conclusion that like my life was so chaotic. And a lot of it was because I was using drugs on a regular basis. And, when the drugs they stop working eventually,
Yeah.
and you have to start looking for solutions that are different. And the common factor after 10 years of being uncomfortable is it's me, and
Right.
people come to that conclusion right away. And sometimes it takes a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't get that till I was 25.
Yeah. Well, people keep wondering about the aha moment and the clear light moment and when it all starts to fall into place. And I've never really kind of bought the idea that it happens like a thunderbolt. I think it's a gradual journey to try to figure out what's going on. Characterize the history of your drug use. I mean, you can get as specific as you like. I'm more interested in the rate of acceleration. You said you began youthfully messing around at 15, probably beer and grass. And give me a kind of timeline on the acceleration.
Yeah, I would say, 15, 16, I started. I was pretty consistent with a couple things I was doing, all the way until I was maybe 24, 25. There definitely, when I went to college, I started trying other things. And, toward my junior year in college, probably 22, 23, I really had kind of shifted some of the substances I was using. But a lot of them I had been using every day for years. There were times when I had tried to stop and maybe stopped for 30 days on my own just to see if I could do it. And I did, but, I didn't really see a whole big problem with it. Things got noticeably worse around 2009 after I had graduated college and worked for a couple of years. And then, the recession came down. I basically was unemployed. I moved back to Philadelphia area from California. And then I had extended amount of time, to myself where I wasn't working. And at that point I was using every day, all day long. And, I had been using that way for a number of years, but, it became painfully obvious to me that I had a drug problem.
Yeah.
And, the next step was like, okay, well, like, how do I fix it? Like, and how do I fix it myself? Because I was not going to go to like AA or any other type of fellowship. I just was like, you know what, I just got to stop doing it. And, that's how like it starts. You start to try to stop doing it on your own. One thing I didn't mention, but I have a brother that's in recovery. I have a little coming up on like 3.5 years. He's got over 10 years. He's a younger brother. I was aware that, programs are out there to assist us, but I definitely was not at a point thinking that I needed any assistance, that this was still something that, hey, I just got to stop using. And
Yeah. Typical reaction of a high achiever. I got myself into this mess. I can get myself out of this mess.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting because the only thing you have to get out of the mess is, in fact, causing the mess. So, you're on a treadmill there. So let me ask you about your brother, though. It's kind of interesting. So he's in programs. He's getting clean and sober. Did he ever say to you, Alex, what are you doing, man? You can't do this alone? Did he ever counsel you that?
So our relationship has changed over the years. There was a time where we did not talk much, and that was probably my mid-20s, because he was, he was clean. Mm-hmm. And really, I was calling and kind of challenging whether or not he was actually clean. And, I was actively using, so we did not talk for a real consistent basis like we do today. He was, and my parents as well. There was a lot of strain in that. The idea is I was going to get help when I was going to get help, and, what ended up happening the first time I even approached or made a decision that I couldn't do it alone was I woke up one morning and said, hey, I need to go to a meeting. I just walked into a meeting. Like, I was just so tired of being the same thing that I just said, I got to try something different. And I was like probably like 25 was my first experience with anything recovery related. And it was just simply, hey, I looked up where to go to an AA meeting. And I walked in, and I remember driving on the way over there and just thinking, hey, I'm going to be in there for 30 days. I'm going to figure out what they're going to do. and like there's no way that I'm like them. And I got in there, I heard about the big book and God and get a sponsor, and like I'm like, man, like there is no way I'm doing that stuff. Like I don't need that. And like that, the consistent thing that prevents people, I think, from getting in the getting into recovery consistently or long term is that there's always this notion, you're always trying to think, you're always thinking you know what you should be doing.
Sure.
And the reality is you don't know anything except for how to use. And if you're struggling, you're listening to yourself, it's going to get in the way of what other people are saying. But it takes a lot to give up the control and open up and surrender and say, hey, you know what, like my life is a mess. I have these issues and I need help. And to admit that to other people and expose that, it's a really big deal.
Well, listen, it's an insidious disease. Organic stuff, it's more easily explained. Cancer, diabetes, stuff like that doesn't lie to you. I mean, cancer doesn't lie to you, right? But addiction, it's a brain disease. It's a brain disease. And there you are thinking, well, this is the thing that can fix it. It's, and it's whispering in your ear, yeah, you can do this, but it knows you can't. And it keeps you in that game. It's an unbelievable disease. I've learned so much over the years. I've been talking to folks in this situation. My eyes have really been opened about this. How long would you characterize the portion of, first of all, how long have you been sober or clean now?
Yeah, so my clean date is January 24th, 2018. So it's, 3 years and a couple months.
Congratulations. That's excellent. During running up to this stretch of time, you said it was a 10-year period when you tried a lot of things to get sober. So that was about a decade-long journey, right?
Yeah, it was. So I tried, I went to my first rehab probably when I was 26. I tried in and out of fellowships on my own. I tried individual therapy, and today I do still see a therapist, but I've tried it all. I've tried it on my own. And I think one of the things that worked for me is that I just started realizing that if I go to a meeting one day, I don't use. It took a while for me to kind of pick that up. And every time I would relapse, I would come back and the same people were there. And I'm looking around going, well, I don't think they're any smarter than me. And they seem to be all doing the same thing. And so then, the one time I'd come back and say, hey, you know what, I'll get a sponsor, but I'm not hanging out with anybody. Or, I'll get a sponsor this time and now I'll do the step work. I kept filling in pieces. But there was part of me that just did not want to be an addict or an alcoholic. Like I did not want to be part of that. I didn't want to be associated with it. I thought I was better than that. I just fought it.
Yeah. Well, there is, and it's still an unfortunate aspect of this, and that is, you mentioned surrender and finally understanding what the situation is about, and the notion that suddenly you are now sort of branded as this thing. I am this thing. Let's admit it. That's a tough one. That's why a lot of people look for alternatives. They want to return to social drug use and all kinds of crazy notions, rather than accept the fact they have a problem, a disease that's identified this way. When you relapsed, and by the way, as we said at the beginning, we're talking about relapse. You can't even put an exact number on it because your journey was so up and down and in and out. How did you feel during those periods of time when you would go to the therapist or go to the meetings and then find yourself 2 days later using again?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough thing. And here's the deal is, when I look back on it, you can see some of the relapses coming. You stop going to meetings, you blow off the therapist, and, off you go. Or, in the beginning for me, I knew I had a plan to use. I just didn't want to tell anybody. I didn't want to put the roadblock up to stop me from using. And I think for me, a lot of that, like being involved with the fellowship, like that was a roadblock. I ultimately was not convinced that I had a problem. And that interfered with,
sure.
Going on recovery stuff interferes.
How long did it take you to share at a meeting? Did you ever?
I think I shared almost right away. I went up there, I said, "Hey, I'm Alex." I gave him my last name, which we're not supposed to do. And, I'm an alcoholic. I think I was pretty convinced I was, I had a problem. But I wasn't 100% convinced that I couldn't solve it on my own.
You mentioned that you could see the relapse coming because of your behavior that contributed to that. Were there, we talk a lot about triggers in this context. Were there triggers for you that caused that?
Sure. I mean, in the beginning, the triggers changed over time, but people, having to give up friends is a big one. Just the anxiety of not using is a trigger in itself. When I stop using and I start feeling, less than other people, or I'm not where I should be in life, or why is this happening to me? There's a lot of stuff that can trigger it. A lot of it for me was just thoughts. And I would put myself in situations too where I shouldn't be, people, places, and things. I mean, that was a big thing in the beginning.
What was going on around you with regard to you mentioned your family being strained and your brother estranged for a while. What about your social life around that? Was that similarly stressed during all this?
Yeah, I mean, my social life was people at the bar. I'd go in there, and I didn't have much of a social life. At least a healthy social life. My friends were people that used like me. We weren't really friends. We would all use each other, and we were all degenerates. That's that. And I was proud of that. I was like, hey, you know what? This is cool. I'm here. And that's what I would do every day. I'd, go to the bar, I'd play pool, and leave. And, at the time I was staying at my dad's house for, probably since I was 25 to 30, 32 or 33, and so the strain that I would take my using back to his house, and there was a lot of strain. And at the end, when I did get to, retreat, I asked them to write a letter to me about how, one of those impact letters. And the basic summary of it was that he thinks I may be a good person, but he hasn't seen that person in years. And that's the reality. Is in the beginning, my parents were very, very supportive of recovery and getting me to a rehab and things. But at the end, it's just like, oh, he's trying to get clean again. I hope he does it. And then really at the end it's just so scary. My parents were not sure I was going to be alive. They didn't know where I was. They didn't know what I was doing. The situation escalates so much. You don't even see it. The next thing you know, I'm thinking about, hey, I want to kill myself. I don't want to be here anymore. And that's a big difference from when I was 25 thinking, hey, this is depressing, but it's not that bad. Like I can deal with it. And over successive relapses, over and over and over again, you just get to a point where it's just so hopeless. And
the darkness descends, that's for sure. How seriously did you contemplate hurting yourself?
Yeah, I mean, my last relapse, and this is really kind of what drove me into it, was around Christmas time in 2017. I went out for 3 weeks. I hadn't been working any sort of program, but I wasn't using for about 2 months. And there was a situation that happened that just made me feel just so much beneath people. And it became so obvious to me that nothing in my life had changed in 10 years. I had no friends. I had no job. I wasn't doing anything that I wanted to be doing. I had no money. I was in credit card debt, and I didn't know where to go, how to get out of it, and to fix that situation. And it triggered me. And I picked up, used my drug of choice right away. And, within a week, I'm going through withdrawals. I'm seeing things. I'm talking to people that aren't there. I'm not eating. I'm not drinking. I'm just using around the clock. And, within 2 weeks, I'd put all my furniture in front of the staircases. I was walking around with a handgun, again, pointing at things that weren't there. And I was hiding in a corner crying in the top of my house, just completely scared. That's what it was like. That's what I remember. And I think it's really, really hard. I couldn't tell you what my other relapses were like. This one I remember to the day. Because it was awful.
Yeah, this was the one. If there was one of those clear light moments, it was then. People have said to me many times, all I knew for sure, was that this wasn't sustainable. I couldn't do this anymore. They weren't completely clear on what to do next. Did you have that feeling where you got, this is crazy, I can't do this anymore?
Yeah, I mean, that was that point, but I feel like I had been there before. But I think what happens is, in the beginning, when I'm 25 and I relapse, I still go to work the next day. When I'm 28 and relapse, I still go to work, right? When I'm 30, I stop going to work. My life shuts down when I relapse, and there was a huge shift over a number of years. And, so this last relapse was that I shut down right away.
Yeah.
And so there is a difference. The options you have around using and stopping, they get taken from you. That option to still go to work or that desire to still go to work, it goes away. And the relapses become more severe and they're more intense and they get intense quicker. And that was my experience. And that last one, I don't want to go back to that. I mean,
you're certainly evidence that relapse, as I said at the beginning, is often a part of this whole process. It doesn't automatically mean you've failed at anything. You just, if this were a race, it means you fell down. Why did you keep getting back up?
I mean, what else do you have to do? I need to fix this, there was such an uncomfortability that I just wanted to be today I work to be the best person I can be. I am not that person every day, but I want to get closer to that. I'm not talking about being perfect, but like I have drives and I have desires and things like that I want to achieve. And, one of my favorite sayings in the fellowship I'm in is a saying that says, lost dreams awaken, new possibilities arise. Like for me, that's the biggest hope shot that I can hear, because there were so many years there where I had no dreams, no hope. I'd given up on everything. And, but deep down, I knew if I could just get clean, I can start accomplishing some stuff. Mm-hmm. And, I just needed to figure out how to do it. And, in my case, I was lucky enough to survive to get to this spot. I have friends I used with that are not here, they did not have this awareness, this acceptance, this surrender. And, I'm just luckily able to just be here, and I'm clinging on to it, just getting as far away from the drugs as I can get every day.
I can appreciate that. I mean, I know in my own life, and I'm not in recovery, but I've always taken a little bit of comfort in, no matter what the day was like, I managed to convince myself, well, tomorrow will be a better day, or at least there's an opportunity for it to be a better day. You lose that when you're using. You lose the sense that there's anything other than this, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing. That's what it is. I mean, you have this very narrow thinking, which is everybody's doing the same thing you're doing. If you go to a movie theater, you got to go and use. If you want to go to a baseball game, you go and use, and you start seeing how you behave, right? One of the things since I've been clean is there's so much more stuff to do. I do a lot of traveling today. I can go mountain bike. I can go weightlifting. There's all these new experiences that are opened up to me. But when you're using, you are literally focused on just the using. You don't see anything else. And you don't see that there's a chance for you to survive and live a different way. And you question whether that you would even want to do that. Like what drug addict wants to get clean, just to go to a bunch of meetings, and like your perception of what being clean is, you have no idea. Your mind it seems to me,
it seems like a negation of who you are. I mean, who you are is someone who likes to get high, likes to get loaded. If I take that away, then what am I?
What am I? You don't know. And that when I came out of rehab and I was in an outpatient program, I had this eye-opening experience where they sat down and they said, describe who you are without using other people or personal items. I didn't know who I was, and that's a really scary thing.
Mm-hmm. You have probably had the occasion over the years now that you've been sober to be with people who were in that spot you were in. Can you spot them a mile away, the guy sitting in the back of the room going, this ain't for me?
You know what? You never know. I mean, some of the people, sometimes you can see it, but, I was probably one of those people that came into the program and I had so much enthusiasm and I was just like, I am not using again. And I see that, and you just don't know. But I my sponsor and a couple of my friends said they put me in their phone as Alex Fire, because they said I was just on fire. Like I was just point me to what I need to do, tell me how to do it, where to go, when, and I'm there. I mean, and this is one of the things, you get to a point when you have enough relapses where you start really getting pretty serious. And I got so serious. I did not want to go to that spot where I was walking around in my house with a gun ready to shoot myself.
Yeah.
I was done with that. I was done with the withdrawal experience in rehab. I was done with the not knowing and not trusting people. I was just over it. And, you do get to a point where you finally you're against the wall. Like, you have hit that wall and you said, you know what, enough's enough. And when I came out of rehab, I did put recovery first. I did not, it was not go get a job. How do I fix everything? How do I pay off the credit card debt? Oh, I don't have any money. It's just, those are the things that happened. And the number one thing was getting in recovery and getting serious about it and building a foundation. And that's what I did my first year. And it made a huge difference.
Well, I mean, your description of your attitude towards relapse is important for people. I remember a conversation with a couple who'd lost their son, multiple bouts and multiple times in and out of rehab. And they were on the program to talk about the importance of treatment. And I said to them, some people are going to wonder how someone in your situation who lost a son to an overdose would be advocating for treatment. And I'll never forget what the mom said. She said, treatment didn't fail our son. He just ran out of time.
Yeah,
because he was trying. There's something inevitable about that behavior that's going to kill you if you're not careful. Alex, I'm going to let you go here now. We've really valued this conversation. It's a question I asked too. I don't know if it's the right word. Do you worry about relapsing?
No, I'm not thinking about it. I don't think about using today. I'm not worried about listen, I don't want to relapse, but there are things that I do to put myself in a position where it's just not an option. And it's going to meetings. It's, doing stuff like this.
You're just not hoping you won't relapse. You're working at not relapsing.
No, I mean, you can't just sit around. The relapse will come and get you if you're sitting around doing nothing. I mean, you got to be moving away from it. You got to be actively involved. That's my personal opinion, but hey, I think there's plenty of research to go and say that these programs work if you're doing what they are recommending.
Well, you know what? If we remember nothing from this conversation, your phrase about moving away from it is really something to hold on to. Anybody's struggling out there, move away from it, and pretty soon you'll have that distance. Alex Penn, thanks so much. Congratulations on the 3 years clean, 3 years plus clean, and obviously we hope many more of those years for you.
Thank you very much, Steve. Our
pleasure. Hey guys, thanks for hanging with us on the corner. Don't forget to look for us wherever finer podcasts are available. Follow us on Facebook, the whole drill. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time on the Behavioral Corner.
At Retreat Behavioral Health, we believe in the power of connection and quality care. We offer comprehensive, holistic, and compassionate treatment from industry-leading experts. Call 855-802-6600 and begin your journey today.
That's it for now. And make us a habit, hanging out at the Behavioral Corner. And when we're not hanging, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter on the Behavioral Corner.